hinge reinforcement and replacement, which we were just talking about. So with this one, because the hinges, there's still some paper attached. The hinge is not completely destroyed. The super is still in moderately decent shape. So this one can probably get away with just using the two-way hinge tape. So what you want to do is measure it out. Again, I like to leave it a couple of millimeters short of the actual height of the book, because it will end up hanging over, and it's notoriously hard to cut out of deep into the gutter of a hinge. And then you want to fold it with the outside surface in, so that the sticky side is now facing out. And then the easiest way to get it deep into the gutter is to wrap it around a ruler, so that you have something that will apply a nice even pressure. And then take off one side of the tape, and you want to line it up as best you can, as close in as you can get it, and as straight as you can get it. And then apply nice even pressure, and burnish it, and then take the other piece of sticky off, or the backing, and line it up as best you can, and then fold it over. You want to try and keep the hinge nice and tight, because a loose hinge, it's just going to get damaged again, and you can only tape it so many times, really. So, and that's a good reinforcement. Again, with this one, because it is a high use item and it's not in the best of shape, you can see this signature has come away a bit as well. It's quite loose. So I'll be applying another piece of hinge tape here to provide some extra reinforcement. And then on this side, when you've got more than one repair that a book is going to need, for example, new hinges and gluing, such as is required with this one, you want to make sure that you get the basic structure of the item fixed first, because there's no point gluing something when you can't fix the hinges on it. And if you try and glue it when the hinges are still really loose, there's a chance that it won't line up, or that you will damage your first repair trying to complete the second one. So it's good to kind of work your way down the priority list with the repairs. Sometimes they will have to sit even overnight or over the weekend for the glue to dry before you can start your next repair. And with this one, because the super is showing, it's not too ratty, but it is starting to pull the back of the spine away from, or the front part of the spine away from the signatures. Sure. And so what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to cut the super and rebuild the hinge using the four-way tape. The tricky thing about cutting supers is when you've got to try and get all of the fabric out so that the tape has something good and stable to adhere to. And so that's when you need a really good pair of scissors. For the initial cut, I like to use a good sharp X-Acto knife, because it will be able to get really close and cut it without leaving it too ragged.
So I'm going to picture you cutting.
Oh, yeah, of course. So just cut the super as close as I can. There we go. So the spine has now completely come apart. Try and clear off any of the raggedness that you can off of the where you're going to have to tape to rebuild the spine, or the hinge, sorry. Clear it off as best you can, because the tape is really only as good as the surface that it's adhered to, which can get quite tricky and interesting in books that get a lot of use and are in really rough shape, such as these. Get all the dust out. Okay, so it's been completely unattached, disattached, and so the next step is going to be to try and trim this without pulling it away from the back of the signatures even more. And you don't want to cut the headband or the tailband. This is the tailband, the little piece of fabric that is it protects the bottom of the signatures against any damage that the spine might sustain. So you want to just try and get all of the fabric out. And again, cutting as close as you can without damaging the rest of the book. So that you get a nice clean edge. Okay. Alright, so we've got a decently clean edge here that we can adhere the tape to. Just get some of this junk out of there. There we go. And then if you'll stand up nice like that. Same as the rest of my taping, I like to cut it just a little bit, probably about ½ centimeter short of the edges, so that it's not catching. I like stitched hinge tape. It's one of my favorite tapes, actually. You know you're a nerd when you have the preference for tapes.
That's a 4-way stuff?
Yeah, this is the
Open it up.
Yep. This is awesome. You're better with that camera than I am.
No, it's in auto.
That's okay. That's all I use it for tomorrow.
I don't even know what's in them.
Okay, and then you just peel off one side of the backing at a time. Oh, here we go. The hardest part when using the 4-way hinge tape is getting it adhered down the spine, because your second, the one side of the tape, the one side of the stitching is going to go here to recreate the one side of the hinge, and then the other side goes along the inside of the spine to typically the back board. In this case, we've got still the end paper and another sheet, but usually it's along the back of the board, and so the hardest part is getting it to, like being able to burnish it down the spine, because when you fix it, the spine ends up closed again. And so that's where your long thin sticks come in very handy. Kebab stick, knitting needle, both McEwen and here at UNBC have managed to find this funny little thin metal stick that works really good. It's not as sturdy as your average knitting needle though, so you've got to really work really hard and try and find a way to bend it at one end to try and put pressure all the way down. And this one's going to be extra fun because this signature is loose too. And you just line it up right where the old hinge used to be. So right at the corner. Again, trying to keep it straight. And nice and tight. And burnish well. I like to do the back of the signatures first because I find that that's can be it's tougher to get it on this side than it is to get it on the back of the spine itself when the second half is completed. Okay, and then remove the backing from the other side. With the release backing for the cloth tape, they've got the little like tab over the end so you can get it. This stuff, they make you fight for it. Can't give it to you too easy. See? Goodness. The next tricky part becomes getting everything lined up without sticking the two sides together. Because that's always fun. You can't fix that. There we go. Okay. And back. I'm going to try to line it up. Again, trying to line up with the location of the original hinge. Keep it straight the whole way. It's easier to repair hinges on larger books than it is on a small book like this, actually. Because you've got a little bit more room to work with. Whereas with this one, it's got such a small spine that it's hard to line up. There we go. There's a funny little stick. I have no idea where they get these. I really don't, but they're handy. I think they might actually come with some of the tattle taping systems.
When I had them, I used it to put tab tape down right where you're at, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where they get them from. They being all of the lovely repair gurus that I've had the pleasure to learn from and work with in the past.
Almost looks like a dipstick from a car.
It totally does. My dad's a mechanic, so that's what I thought the first time too. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Okay, this one might even be a little bit sturdier. I'm gonna burnish it as best as you can. Working in such a small spot is difficult, but there we go. That's right. Burnish it on this side as well. Again, with this one, because it is in such poor shape and it is high volume, there will be more tape applied to this over the coming week. But that's rebuilding a hinge. And you can do the same for paperbacks. With paperbacks, though, you wouldn't use the the 4-way tape, you just use the 2-way tape, because there is no stitched hinge that you have to replace. There's no super, so you would just get it in as deep as you can with the ruler and burnish it really well, and you can use it to put your covers back on. After, I like to use it after gluing, just because it is such a high stress area right along the cover. So this is what I find often in paperbacks too, is the very back page will be glued out farther than the next page in.
Why do
So-
they do that?
I have no idea. It's like they think that it's gonna help, but then because it's
They didn't use wax paper.
Yeah.
they must not have, because yeah, and see, even this one you can see it's glued out a little bit on this one, so they must not have they must have had a failure in the gluing there. And so you find there's a lot of damage usually on the second page in, which is frustrating because then you're dealing with 2 pieces of paper, not, you know, a more sturdy cover and a piece of paper.